So on the panel, I was slightly controversial at the moment by going, I don't actually use AI in my day job as an investor relations officer on that. And I think, part of what was discussed in the panel is the fact that the use cases at the moment are fairly selective. And for the size of company and the size of team I am, we don't have the capacity to do that. But I do actually use AI, and I have my own models, etc., because I'm a non-executive director on a technology. So I'm keeping up to date and I'm trialing it, but I'm not using it for any specific tool at the moment.
So the Vodafone IR team in London today is about 10 people, but if you take into account all of our listed subsidiaries and investments all over the world, we have a much larger IR team. So there are lots of different ways that different people can adopt AI. From our perspective, we're at the beginning of our journey. So we're using it in the context of being able to search our previous materials, to pull out useful information from broker notes, analyst reports, and then also being able to identify top themes within both conference calls from our perspective and our competitors as well. So we're using AI there. And then we're also increasingly using AI in the CRM context. So that could be something as I'm not going to say mundane because it's not mundane, but simple as summarizing meeting notes, identifying top themes within a meeting or a series of meetings. Let's say you've been on a roadshow over a number of days and you want to pull out the top topics, but then taking it to the next step and actually giving our CRM tool information and a knowledge base from which we can ask questions to a generative AI model behind closed doors. And that's really important from an AI perspective because I think we're all naturally cautious about using public AI models and giving it information. Obviously, there is a separate question about the sensitive level of IR information you could give it, but certainly information that's in the public domain, I think that's a really interesting use case in terms of using generative AI tools.
So I think good investor relations officers understand where their data is coming from, how it's being used, and can interpret the output. And so I think some of the question marks or challenges are just at the moment with AI, what's it actually doing? So I think the key thing in terms of a skill set which you need to make sure you are managing those concerns is understanding how AI works and therefore what is it actually doing with the data you're giving it or you're looking at. So for example, you've got machine learning models and you've also got large language models, etc. And they are basically looking for patterns, looking for interpretations. So you need to make sure that that model is learning on the right kind of information in order to then go and interrogate the data you want from them. So point number one is actually make sure you know what model you're using and why, and then the quality of data which is coming in. So it's not everything is all about AI, it's understanding specifically what you're doing. And when you're talking to service providers, challenge them. What they're using it for, what kind of model, where is it learning on, how useful is it, what's the questions in terms of the quality of the output.
So I think I would start off in terms of challenges for everyone, I think, with AI, which is simply the pace of change and not knowing what you can do with the tool. So there are a lot of known or unknown unknowns. I think from an IR perspective, I highlighted a couple of challenges on the panel just a moment ago. Number one, learning effective prompt engineering. Yeah. So how do you use AI and give it instructions that give you reasonable output following those prompts? Then there's the second element, which is which knowledge bases or which information are you going to be giving the tool to give you those answers? Because simplistically, garbage in, garbage out. If you give it useless information with no context or doesn't give it enough context, then you're going to get relatively poor results out of the AI models today. But I think the biggest challenge for AI teams is really thinking how are our stakeholders and investors using AI themselves, and how do we need to think about producing our own materials and how we communicate with the market to ensure that our investors who are using AI themselves increasingly are getting the information they need. So I think a key thing for IR teams is really to be looking outwards and speaking both to suppliers in terms of what they're developing from an AI perspective, and then also thinking how are other IR teams using AI. That's why events like this one today are really useful, because everyone's at a different stage of their AI adoption journey, and it's really interesting to hear challenges and opportunities from other IR teams' perspective.
So there are probably three areas I was in. Now clearly coming to events like this is part of my own learning to hear how other people in my situation, my position, are using AI and what are they looking forward to using it in the future. So clearly that is keeping the education up to date. I think also it's then talking to the software providers who I view as my partners. I'm a team of one, so the people who are helping me with investor targeting, with other kinds of analysis, are very much my partners. So what are they doing in terms of AI? When are they starting to help give me the kind of tools? And asking their competitors, because I think there will be not a race here, but I think people who provide quality use cases will come out of those software providers. And then finally, inside a business, we will have people who are investigating AI for use within the business. So I absolutely want to go and talk to them. First of all, so I can understand what we're using it for, because that's important from an AI perspective, but understanding from there what the potential development is and how I might use that in my own role. So there's been a lot of talk about productivity gains and taking away some of the more onerous tasks or mundane tasks. And I go, that's absolutely fine. That will be true for most businesses and most teams around the place. So if we really think about in the investor relations sphere, I think that it's all about where do you have larger pools of data and how you can interrogate that. To me, that's very definitely within the investor targeting space and how one can try and interpret that. Secondly, it's within the ESG space, and particularly where one's having to interpret what populations are looking for and how to negotiate that side. So I think those are two very different areas.
I think for me a big opportunity is on the reporting, in the reporting space. If you think about annual reports, there's a huge amount of relatively mechanical effort that goes into rolling it forward, summarising a lot of information into a more kind of succinct paragraphs or sections. You potentially could also use AI to benchmark yourself versus competitors in terms of what they do or don't mention versus you. And then I think there is a real opportunity in taking information from annual reports and allowing, let's say, automatic website updates or automatic translation of your website or your reporting materials to enable investors from anywhere in the world to consume your information.